Okay, welcome to another edition of the Pat Dooley Show. Hope everybody got back from Knoxville safely if you went or enjoyed the game on TV. Certainly a big win for Florida. In fact, I don't know of a team, there may be one out there that's had two bigger wins in the country right now than Florida. You know, certainly Alabama, you might say Alabama beating Michigan and destroying Arkansas, but this Arkansas team's not very good without Tyler Wilson apparently. So maybe Alabama. Notre Dame, you could say that, although I'm not overly impressed with Purdue. But certainly for Florida to go on the road and beat Texas A&M and Tennessee, as I said in my column, those games are going to be joined at the hip forever. You're going to remember those two games when they went on the road and those atmospheres, incredible atmospheres. In fact, the players were saying after the game that Tennessee atmosphere was actually a ton better or harder than the Texas A&M atmosphere, which didn't surprise me because there were about 30,000 more people there. But it certainly, or 20,000, but it certainly was a big win for Florida to go get it. The way they got it, the fashion I guess we're going to see all year is that they're going to struggle in the first half, play great in the second half, and they played unbelievable. Big plays came out. That was good to see. We didn't know if Florida had big playmakers, but they did. They actually picked off Tyler Bray twice. Could have dropped two others they could have had. So clearly, you know, the one thing about that game was Tyler Bray, when you made him one-dimensional, you took away the run, which they really did in the second half, and then put some heat on him, he wasn't very good. He's not like, you know, I'll be honest with you, Jeff Driscoll looked like the experienced NFL quarterback in that game, made two unbelievable throws with guys in his face. Tyler Bray struggled with it a lot. So certainly a good win for Florida, and it'll be interesting to see, to me, this crowd in the game Saturday. Obviously there were empty seats for the first game, and you kind of understood it. It's a 12-20 game. It's going to be hot, I'm guessing. I know there's a forecast of possibly some rain later in the day, but I would think people would want to go and just celebrate what's happened the last 2 weeks more than anything. But we'll see. I mean, with the economy, we all know that why people aren't going to games. It's this way all over the country. I mean, you have the special games like the Tennessee-Florida game where game day's there and they know this is the chance they got to beat Florida, and you're still going to see 104,000. But more and more you're seeing is, and even some places where they do sell well, that more and more fans are staying home. And we've talked about this before. It's easier. You know, in fact, I had somebody tell me he was trying to get somebody to go to a game, and he said, I got 17 reasons why I'm not going. He goes, what? What do you mean 17 reasons? He goes, it's 17 steps from my recliner to the bathroom. That's why I'm not going to the game. I'm going to stay here and watch it on TV. But certainly for Florida, you know, I mentioned this on the radio show, and again, you can click on that and listen to that, but it's a do-your-job game. They just got to get come to work. Come, you know, bring your lunch pail and get the job done. Kentucky's not very good, but anybody's good enough. Look, when you see what happened in the last couple of weeks, Stanford knocking off USC, with Pitt knocking off Virginia Tech, you know, all those kind of games, craziness going on. Louisiana Monroe, obviously what they did to Arkansas. You see all that, you better bring it every week. This is SEC football. Kentucky's the worst team in the SEC in my opinion, but you still better bring it. So we'll see if the Gators do bring it and get it done. Kentucky can throw it around a little bit. They're leading the SEC in passing, and that could be really good for Florida. They've been good at stopping the run already, so you know if they can put some heat on I almost said Maxwell Smith, and you know maybe force some interceptions and get up on top early and let the young guys play. That would be the ideal thing. That hasn't been the way they've done it the last 2 weeks, but it'll be interesting to see just how well they play. Obviously, with this crazy college football season already, a lot of things are changing. A lot of things are, you kind of look at different teams differently. And that's one thing I talked about in the preseason. Right now, you all have an opinion of every team in college football. Maybe some of them you don't care about and you don't. But for those of us who are really big fanatical college football fans, which I am, you went into the season with an idea. This team's going to be this. This team's going to be this. There aren't too many teams you still feel the exact same way about. And that includes Alabama, for example. Alabama's a team I thought they might be really good. They might be the best team in the country. I didn't think they were going to be this good. LSU, I'm still not sure about. So maybe my opinion of them is about the same. They haven't really played anybody good. So, you know, there are other teams out there. Vanderbilt, Auburn's obviously disappointments that they're having. Georgia, they're a little better than I thought they might be. But I think in the case of Florida, I told everybody all offseason, and all these speeches that I gave, my tour of the Panhandle, I said one thing was my main focus. I said, your team is going to be a better football team than it was last year. I know that for a fact. Now, what does that translate to? We still don't know. But we do know, I was right about that. They're a better football team than they were last year. Better coaches, Players are older, more experienced. They didn't lose a lot of talent, obviously. And I think Will Muschamp much more comfortable in his own skin. All right, right now we're gonna go and do three things. Okay, it's time for three things that I think. I'm starting to sound like Ron Zook now. First of all, did the NFL send replacement officials to the SEC? You saw the game Saturday night. I mean, they seemed to lose control of it. But the thing that caught, I didn't notice it at the game. Obviously, we're up really high, the press box on the moon. But when I watched it on DVR, on Jeff Driscoll's touchdown run that they reviewed and brought back, he stepped out of bounds 4 times. 4 times in succession. There's an official staring down the line at him and didn't call him out of bounds. He literally, one time his foot was like this far out of bounds. And again, they reviewed it and got it right, but what were those guys looking at in that game? And they kind of lost control there in the second quarter of the game, where they just didn't seem to know what was going on. And after watching the Monday night game, maybe they shipped those guys up there because they were totally clueless in that game. Number 2, is Ohio State any good? I still don't know the answer to that. We watched a lot of the Ohio State-Cal game and listened to the end of it, coming to the Tennessee game, obviously. I just don't know if they're any good. I mean, they're 3-0. They're going to be 4-0. They got UAB this week. We all know, and no matter what you think of the way Urban Meyer left here, he's a really, really good coach. He's one of the best coaches in America. And they're going to get to that level where they can contend for a national title. But I'm still not sure about them. I mean, they should beat Cal bigger than they did, and they really haven't beaten anybody yet. So that's one thing I think that I don't know is Ohio State any good? Because I know Cal isn't, but we'll see. I mean, again, their tests are still to come, and the Pac-10 is so bad this year. I'm not sure it really matters if they're good, really good. They might might be enough to win and go undefeated. Then they can claim a mythical national title, I guess, since they can't go to a bowl. And number 3, we're seeing this happen especially in the SEC. Players getting suspended. The latest was DJ Swearingen at South Carolina for targeting receivers or running backs or whoever. And at first we saw a couple of plays when Robbie and I were watching them in our hotel where we're like, he didn't hit him in the head. Well, I didn't realize it. So maybe you do or maybe you don't. You probably do because you're smarter than me. But it's a rule now that if you target a guy, you don't have to hit him in the head. If you hit him in the shoulder pads or in the chest and you're targeting him with the crown of your helmet, that's still a penalty. And that can be an ejection. And we're seeing this more and more as the SEC and other conferences try to make things safer for teams. I'm all in favor of making things safe, but you can't take it too much out. I mean, I'm not a big fan of this kickoff rule, as you know. And my solution was get rid of the kickoffs, but then somebody reminded me, well, what if you wanted an onside kick? That's a good point. So that's still going to stay in. But we watched, obviously the game Saturday night, Florida and Tennessee. There was like 2, I think, kickoff returns. I mean, everything else was through the end zone, out of the end zone. But certainly, I agree totally on the helmet to helmet, but helmet to chest, and that's a little iffy, but I understand what they're doing. All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll have our panel, and we have a lot of great things to discuss here on the Pat Dooley Show. All right, welcome back to the Pat Dooley Show. We got a great panel for you today. My good buddy Steve Russell. We've been both did radio for a long time in this town, from ESPN Radio now, RUF.
We're old.
Yeah, it's like one time we were going to a bar in Nashville and with guys like Cody's age, and they were IDing them as they walked in, and I go, "You want to see my ID?" He goes, "You're wearing yours." So, and of course, Cody Jones from FightingGators.com. If we were doing a baseball show, I wouldn't even talk. I would just let Cody do the whole show. But he also, of course, covers football for Fighting Gators. But I know you love your college baseball. You and I are like two of the few people that love college baseball.
Very few nowadays.
Yes. No more pings, too. It's great.
Yeah, I like it.
So we're going to talk about the 5 subjects, as always, and I appreciate these guys for coming in on a rainy day here in Gainesville. Start off with the first one. Steve, Derek Dooley was on the hot seat when the season began. There's no question. Won the NC State game, beat a mediocre ACC team off the hot seat. Now he loses to Florida. They get demolished in the second half. I watched them play in person, as you know, and they're slow on defense still. Do you think he's back on the hot seat?
Yes, squarely. Look, each week is its own little soap opera.
Right.
And it went from Tennessee fans being overconfident, not respecting Florida, making too much of their team, to now we're back to the same old Tennessee. We're going to win 5 or 6 games. Yes, squarely on the hot seat.
Cody, when we checked into our hotel up there, the girl told us they were going to storm the field after the game, and I said, win or lose? And she goes, oh, no, we're not going to lose. I've never seen a fan base that confident, but when you're that confident and you lose, there's going to be some grumbling.
Absolutely. We heard talks about a victory party going on Saturday. There were multiple already planned, so you got to wonder what was going on there, if Florida fans were going to that. I think he really has worked his way right back onto it. Not just the way that they looked. I think it was more so the opponent. If it was another game that they lost, they played Florida or a different team than Florida that third game, sure, maybe the pressure isn't as much, but those fans are really sick of losing to Florida. I think that more than anything puts a lot more pressure on him.
And you know, this week they've got Akron, which had 43 first downs last week with Terry Bowden, but they're not very good still to compete with them. But then it's like, I think they got like Georgia, Mississippi State, Alabama, South Carolina. I mean, he could easily go 0-4 in those games. You talk about hot. That's going to go from an orange pants to red pants. Number 2, Cody, start with you. Whose Heisman future do you like better, Jeff Driscoll or Johnny Manziel?
Give me Johnny Manziel in this one. And the interesting situation about this for me is I think he's more of in an offense that will put up stats that should get the Heisman hype. You saw what Case Keenum did under Kevin Sumlin. He's got that, and he's also got an extra year to do it in. So I think whereas Florida, you'll see Jeff Driscoll probably be a guy that's going to hand it off a lot more. Obviously, they want him to make plays, and they're starting to trust him to do that more. But I think Johnny Manziel is probably more set up for a Heisman run.
You know, Steve, I thought Driscoll made 2 NFL-type throws against Tennessee, the 2 touchdowns, because he had a guy right in his face, and I like that. But one thing he said is true. Manziel does have an extra year, but he's also going to go against Alabama and LSU's defenses every year.
Yeah, but I agree with Cody, just from this standpoint, Pat. That offense is geared for that. Someone loves to throw the football, where in Florida's offense, they want to be Alabama. Balance, run the ball. You're not going to throw the ball 35, 40 times. Now, that kid can run too. We know how fast he is, but when he gets used to that someone offense, I think they throw it more. Better chance for him.
Yeah, the funny thing is, Jeff still is a little, it's like when he takes off, it's almost like he's been beaten into his head so much, don't run, that he kind of gets a little, hesitant when he gets on the outside. But I think the future's bright for both those guys, and when you look at the SEC, those are 2 teams to watch because of quarterback play. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about it. Number 3, all right, you got a choice. You're going to Vegas. $200 you're going to put on one of these teams. Which one are you going to pick? Kentucky plus 23.5 or Auburn plus 18.5? Of course, Auburn plays the mighty LSU Tigers this week.
Boy, that's like, you know what? I'd probably say Auburn. Just because look, Florida's owned Kentucky. The only thing here is if Florida lets down somehow. And I don't see that happening. And Kentucky, frankly, except for throwing the football, isn't really good. They can't stop anybody running the ball. They don't run the ball very well. They're not very good. Auburn's not great either, but at least, they're playing an SEC West team. It's kind of a rivalry game. I'll go with them, but shaky.
Yeah, and the thing about Kentucky is, the one thing I like about where Kentucky is on the schedule, Cody, is that the open dates afterwards, and players look forward to those. So it's almost like, hey, let's go one more time and bust our tails, and then we get a week off, and that may lead to a high-scoring game.
Absolutely. I think it's more of a mental thing for Kentucky than anything at this point. Not only that bye week, but also just the 25-game losing streak at this point. That's got to be wearing on them a little bit. I still think I'd take Auburn at this point. I think home field advantage, that's probably the bigger reason I would take them, is just being at home. Obviously, they haven't looked very good. That offense against this LSU defense is a pretty big mismatch at this point. But I still think I'd go Auburn just because they are the home team.
Well, the one thing, reason I would take Kentucky, or 2 reasons actually. One is that LSU, when they get it going, it steamrolls. Mm-hmm. And Auburn's players are got to be going, what in the world are we doing? Secondly is that Florida's not designed to blow people out. And they don't really try to do that. They're trying to, right now they're trying to figure out a way to win this game, 28-14. And so, but anyway, you go. How much though do you put into the Brent Peace comments firing up Kentucky?
I think that's another reason I think I would probably go with Auburn a little bit there. I think Florida could cover that spread just because of that, with the Jared Lorenzen comments and the way that he was very critical of the Brent Pease hire. And Pease actually kind of settled that a little bit today. He downplayed his comments on it about trying to hang 50 on him, but he certainly didn't take his comments back. They were still out there and very real.
Well, and he found out the evils of Gator clubs. When you go there and talk,
Yeah.
somebody's going to be in the crowd.
And the other thing is, you can say all you want about revenge and all that, but if you're not any good,
Yeah,
not going to help. They're not any good.
it hasn't worked for 25 years.
Exactly. They're not any good.
All right, number 4, we talked about Arkansas a little bit, but can Tyler Wilson rally Arkansas? And of course, Tyler Wilson walking in, which is unusual for a guy who's not playing. We can't get the guys who play to come into the media room. For a guy who's not playing to come into the media room and basically throw his teammates under the bus. I mean, Cody, I've never seen that, but okay, this is your version of the Tebow pledge. Can this rally Arkansas?
I don't think so. I think it might be the opposite of the Tebow pledge, just because now his teammates feel like they've been thrown under the bus a little bit. So I think they kind of maybe even checked out a little bit mentally just after that, after the beating they took against Alabama. It would take a lot to regroup. I think it would take, number one, a quarterback that they respected maybe a little bit more than how he handled that situation, but also a coach that could kind of regroup that. We haven't really seen that out of John L. Smith,
Right.
the ability to do that. So I think that's another factor within this. So I don't think he can regroup them at this point.
And I mentioned this, Steve, on one of the things I did. I can't remember what's the radio review. The red flag should have been the bankruptcy for John L. Smith. They should have said, "You can't manage your funds, your finances. You certainly can't manage our football team." But they made this risky hire. You know, it's funny when we were in Hoover, I wrote a column saying, "Hey, this makes some sense, really. John L. Smith is so crazy and loose. That's probably exactly what they need." I was wrong. Let me say that publicly. Boy, was I wrong.
Well, he's loose. Too loose. But the thing about Tyler Wilson is this, and we've seen it in a lot of locker rooms. Kids of this age don't always play for the coach.
Right.
They'll play for themselves. Now, the question becomes, Cody, what you said, I think, do those players rally around a guy who's basically called them out? Now, look, we all know he's a good player, and he's got some talent around him. Now, defensively, they're terrible. But I think they do rally with him. Now, do I think they win 10 games? No. But I think they will rally and be better because of what he said. One of two things is going to happen. They're going to just tank it,
Right.
or they're going to rally. I say they rally a little bit.
And I think a little bit of it is accumulation of all that's going on there.
Sure it is.
People want to lay the blame. The blame lays with Bobby Petrino. He's the guy who got him into this mess more than John L. Smith did. But it'll be interesting to see. I mean, they still got LSU on the schedule, still got South Carolina on the schedule. It's going to be tough for them to win a lot of games, but it'll certainly be interesting to continue to follow. Finally, our last question for the panel. I'm going to give you one or the other. You take the field for the national championship, or you take Alabama for the national championship?
Alabama's awfully good. And Saban, we all saw that media rant when they were playing Western Kentucky. The media is afraid of him, won't call him out. I see what he was doing as a coach. Every team is beatable. And certainly, when you go across a season, you're going to come across a game where you luck out or something happens. They got to play LSU yet, who obviously, and there's some people think LSU's going to win. But I'm convinced, they just have reloaded there. McCarron is a lot better than I thought he would be. Now, when you have a great run game like they have and a defense as good as Alabama's is, you can pound them, and then play action, and only threw 16 passes the other day. I like Alabama.
Yeah, the thing about Alabama that I like a lot is that teams are trying to take away the run. McCarron's shown he can throw the ball. I think he's a Heisman candidate now. I don't know. I don't think he's on the list yet, but he's got a shot at being at the list. But if you had Alabama or the field, which one would you take?
I still think I would go Alabama, and McCarron plays into that a little bit. Like you said, the stats aren't necessarily the prettiest you've ever seen, but if you take in the intangibles, you take in him managing that offense and what he's done, I think they've got to be a factor. And then obviously the defensive side of the ball, just watching that NFL draft last year was basically a commercial for Alabama, and Nick Saban was all over the place, and all their players. Now they're just plugging different guys in, and now these guys are becoming household names. It really is impressive what they've done on the defensive side of the ball. So I think it all just kind of comes down to that offense, and we haven't seen anything yet to make us think that offense would be slowed.
And, I mean, they did pitch a shutout against Arkansas. Arkansas didn't have Tyler Wilson, but still pretty impressive. I always take the field, though, because all I got to have is Alabama lose one game. And it could even be the national championship game. Now, I said that they lose one game, and, I got all these 119 other teams. Well, some of them have already been eliminated, I guess.
You don't have that many.
I would have to say. I got a lot of teams still, and we'll see what happens. But it's going to be interesting as we go down the stretch. If you ask me who I think's going to win it all, I'll take Alabama. And although after this week I may be saying FSU, we'll see how they do against Clemson. Before we go, I'd be remiss. I got Cody in the room and a camera in front of him. I got to ask him about Florida's baseball team this year. I've talked to Kevin O'Sullivan about it, but of course they lose. I don't think he made a great point. They lose, what was it, 7 to the draft juniors, 6 incoming. That's half your roster.
Yeah.
Basically of a 27-man roster. But he's excited about this team. Tell us what you know about him.
I think it's an interesting team because now it's more of coaching. It's not as much of, okay, here's our 7 All-Americans, go get them. Now they have to kind of get down to it in the fall and work with these guys a little bit more. I think part of that is exciting for the coaching staff and even for the players, certainly a lot as well. A lot's been made of what they lost to the draft. The reality is, I think that's why they played with the lineup a little bit last year at the beginning. They've still got only 2 true new starters this year, probably at shortstop and whoever wins one of the jobs in the outfield. They still have some experience coming back. Obviously, there aren't the All-Americans and the stars next to the name that the guys used to have. But again, when you've got 2 guys on the mound like Jonathan Crawford and Carson Whitson, Crawford will be a first-rounder this year, and Whitson can be, if he can get back to the form he was. When you've got those guys on the mound, you can still be good. I think the upside of this team is probably a super regional team. I think that's probably best case for them. But again, anything can happen. I think you'll see a similar season to what Vanderbilt went through last year.
Yeah.
They lost a ton of guys 2 years ago.
Struggled early.
Struggled real bad at the beginning. Were real up and down, and then at the end of the season, they were 1 game short of coming here for the Super Regional. So they really put it together down the stretch. I think Florida has the potential to do that. They have the bodies to do it, but you just never know how things are going to play out.
But
have you seen Richie Martin play?
Is he special?
Because obviously he's news to me when
Special.
But the way they talk about him,
Yeah.
he's going to be the shortstop next year.
And you know, the other thing, Cody, that I think people forget is that pitching staff, Kevin O'Sullivan, I don't care how many guys get drafted, he always restocks.
Right.
And if Whitson does come back to form, your Friday, Saturday guy is at least going to be really, really good. Their bullpen's going to be good, and some of those young arms now will begin to develop. They won't hit like they did, because look, all those home runs, all those RBIs lead.
Yeah.
But they can win games 5-4, 4-3. Until those hitters develop, it's going to be pitching dominated. They're going to be pretty good again.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch.
It's a different offense, too. I think part of that is because of the bats. You look at last year's offense was built for the metal bats that had all the power in it. Now with the bats being dumbed down a little bit more, it's a different style of offense because these guys can really run now. And that's what you're going to see. They're going to run a lot more. They had to do that his first year here just because they didn't really have the bats as much. Now you're going to see them a lot more. It's a more athletic team, a more fun to watch team. You'll see a lot more hit and runs, just trying to create the runs and not relying on the 3-run homer as much.
See, bonus stuff. We give you bonus stuff. You get football and baseball. That's going to do it. I want to thank, of course, my great panel. You guys did a great job. We'll be right back with the list. All right. Appreciate our panel for coming in here. We always have a good time with them. And it's time now for the list. Of course, we do this at the end of every show. And the list today, we're a quarter of the way in the season. Already some disappointments. I've got the 5 most disappointing teams so far in college football. And number 1, of course, is Arkansas. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Preseason number 10, now completely out of the rankings. Not only did they lost twice, but to lose the way they did to Louisiana Monroe, okay, those things happen. But then 52-0. I know Tyler Wilson. Look, Tyler Wilson should win the Heisman if they win the rest of their games because he easily would be the most valuable player in the league or in college football. Think about it, 52-0. I don't care how good Alabama is, okay? They're really good. They're the best team in the country. You should never lose 52-0. And for Tyler Wilson to go in there and challenge his team, basically say some guys weren't giving their all out there, it shows you how far it's gone. And that is a coaching issue. The red flag should have been there for Jeff Long when he was going to make that hire of the bankruptcy issues that John L. Smith had. That if you can't manage your finances, you can't manage your football team. Number 2 is Auburn. Auburn, of course, was just outside the polls when the season began. I think they were 28th if you went down that far. But for them right now to be 1-2 and to be celebrating a win over Louisiana Monroe in overtime because Louisiana Monroe's kicker missed a field goal, up 28-14, couldn't put them away. They came back, and now, of course, with the LSU game, they're going to be 1-3, and I don't care who you are, that's disappointing. This team just doesn't look very good, and the coordinators they hired are shaky at best. Very shaky in the case of Scott Leffler. Number 3, Colorado, and you say disappointing. Colorado, we knew weren't going to be any good. Nobody should be this bad as Colorado. They gave up something like 561 yards to Fresno State last week in the first half. They were destroyed by a Fresno State team that's not very good. I don't know what they're doing. Colorado's a beautiful place. It should be easy to recruit there. I've been to the campus. I've been to the stadium. It's really neat. They got the coolest mascot in all of football. They bring a buffalo running on the field. That doesn't get you fired up. Nothing will. Why they're so bad is beyond. I just can't understand. They are the worst team in Division I. I mean, by far, and that includes all the other Sun Belt and And maybe I'm not even sure they could win a game in the FBS if they were playing, or the FCS if they were playing in the playoffs. Number 4, Wisconsin, which was ranked 12th in the preseason. Of course, Wisconsin's 2-1, but their wins hardly impressive, barely beating Northern Iowa and Utah State. And they're, of course, losing to Oregon State. Again, we don't know if Oregon State can play at all. Oregon State's only played one game, which is amazing. I don't know, that's a weird schedule. They played Nicholls State like 2 days after the Pac-12 championship game. But anyway, that's another story. Wisconsin, though, played so poorly this year that they fired their offensive line coach. And last week, the Wisconsin fans were actually booing their own team at home. So they got to be considered a disappointment. And number 5 would be Vanderbilt. And the only reason I put Vandy in there, I know they're 1-2. You know, losing to Northwestern was a little bit of a surprise. Northwestern's not bad. They're 3-0. They're the only team in college football that's won 3 games against Division I teams right now. So that says something for Northwestern. But Northwestern and, of course, the opener South Carolina, where they looked okay, but to be 1-2 here, and now Aaron Rodgers' brother Jordan has been benched. They don't know which quarterback's going to play this week. I just thought they'd be better than this. And their win is over Presbyterian. I think it was, I don't even know what division they're in. But Vanderbilt, to me right now, is a disappointment. Now again, this is a third or a quarter of the way through the season, 3 games. Maybe these teams can turn it around. Although in the cases of Colorado, is not going to turn it around, and I don't know that Auburn is going to be able to turn it around either. Certainly, I don't expect them to this week, but you never know. That's why we love college football. That's going to do it for today's show. We appreciate you for clicking on. Thanks to the panel again, and we will be back not next week. Next week we're taking the week off, just like the Gators are. Be back the following week to talk about the big battle between Florida and LSU. Until then, this is Pat Dooley, sports columnist of the Gainesville Sun, saying so long from the Sunshine State.